What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios for another week of building Mygeeto in LEGO. Since the very beginning of this series, there has been something quietly occupying the back of my mind. A whisper. You need to build a Tri Droid. I know that's a bit anticlimactic, but it's true. One of the main players in the Battle of Mygeeto is the giant magna Tri Droid towering above the battle, raining down death and destruction. And I want to build and design my own for Mygeeto, so today I'm finally going to figure out how big it's going to be and, well, how exactly one goes about building a droid. I'm also going to build the final versions of a couple of buildings and figure out how to get them to sit at a weird angle in the city. If angles and droid legs don't get you excited, I don't know what will. So make sure to execute order 66 on that like button and let's get building.
Mygeeto has some very distinct looking buildings. And I have some prototypes sitting around for a couple of months, so I'm going to start the week by finishing those. Starting with the base, I kept it real simple. The eye-catching part of Mygeeto's buildings are these tapering roofs, and since those are so big, they'll cover up most of the base anyways, so they're just gonna have a door and a couple of windows, but I mean, what else do you need? This design also allows me to reuse the hordes of macaroni bricks left over from Coruscant. The roof is comprised of dishes built out of the large quarter cylinder bricks and some regular brick and slope. To capture the right look for the windows, I stacked rows of black brick with trans light blue cylinders in front of them to create the windows. The black is so you can't see through them into the empty shell of the building. The dishes were the right shape but looked kind of flat and shallow, so I built some round corners out of slopes and connected them to the undersides of the dishes using headlight bricks to make them thicker and more robust looking. I'm really happy with how this technique turned out, and it makes each level of the roof look more realistic and makes the whole building taller, which is much needed because these buildings aren't very tall. The ones we see on Mygeeto are massive skyscrapers, and I obviously can't recreate those in minifig scale, but I still want to capture that good sense of height. I don't want this to look like an outer rim village. So I'm going to build duplicates of some of the dishes, so when I stack them, I can effectively double the height of the building without too much extra work, and its base won't be any wider. This will also allow me to have more variation in height with the buildings and create a more interesting skyline, since I can change how many dishes each one has, so none of the buildings end at the same height. You can also see how much of a difference even adding just a couple extra dishes makes, and this means I can also use the same building design and modify it slightly to create a new look instead of having to come up with 6 or 7 completely different building designs that still match with each other. Now that the buildings are done, I need to figure out how to place them in the city. I want them to sit at an angle so that the doorways are facing inwards towards the center of the plateau, but they can't connect to the studs on the ground at that angle. So I'm going to try out a technique I've been wanting to use for years now. I'm taking a bunch of left facing wedge plates and placing them in rows with the bottom of each row touching the top of the next one. This creates a square opening, but it sits at an angle from the rest of the studs on the ground, and the opening is 16 by 16 studs, which is exactly how big the base of my buildings are.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
And since all the wedge plates are connected to the ground, I can run plate and tile right up to their edges, so hardly any of the filler plate underneath will be exposed. This technique is so dope. It's really simple and allows you to place buildings at cool angles and fit them into corners and spots that would normally be too small. I decided to tile off this foundation before I put the building in, since there's so little space between the walls and rock face that once the wide roof of the building is in, I won't be able to get my hands in to place tile or plate. But since they aren't connected to any studs, these buildings can go in at any time with relative ease. With the foundations in, I can now lay out where the road's gonna go. I'm gonna start with a layer of light bluish gray plate to represent cement or other building materials used to construct the road. On top of that, I'll place down either the ingots or round plate I showed you in last week's update. Having the sidewall still open was a huge lifesaver while working on this, since I can't push down on the green plate super hard without breaking it, but with the hole in the side I was able to stick my hand under the city and support wherever I was building. There's an island of empty studs created by the road, not big enough for a house, so I decided to build this little power generator thing I found while looking at Mygeeto architecture. It's small and matches the vibe I'm going for, plus I want to make sure to fill up as much of the empty spaces as possible with structures and other city looking things just to make it feel more dense and populated. Now for a moment long awaited by you and especially me, the beginning of the Magna Tri Droid. I've been putting this off partly because I was working on the UT-80 and partly because I have zero idea how to approach this build. The Tri Droid has a massive but at the same time spindly body, with most of the mass being in the head area. I've never built a droid walker before, so I didn't really know where to start, and I also have a size constraint because it needs to be able to fit in on the main bridge. So I decided to start with the legs to get the right size and then scale the head and guns to those. There aren't any standout features on the legs, they're basically metal poles connected with joints and moved by these pistons, I guess. The color scheme looks to be gray, so I'm just going to throw some pieces together in a way that looks cool and is strong enough to hold up the head. I'm building 3 separate smaller legs that when connected together will get that creepy crouching spider look. The legs look pretty flat as well, but I don't want mine to just be boring 1x10 pulls, so I'm putting headlight bricks in the different leg sections so I can connect tiles to the sides. This will make the legs look thicker and give them more texture and detail. All the parts used were pretty easy to find, except for these 1x2 hinge plates. I thought I had a bunch, but I couldn't find any except for on one build. The Tri Droid's in the new battle pack, so sadly I had to cannibalize one to continue building. On the biggest leg section there were a bunch of exposed brick undersides, so I used some half pegs and tile to cover them up, since this will be one of the most visible sides on the Tri Droid's legs, so I wanted to make them look as smooth as possible. The feet were really easy. I just used some slopes connected to a hinge plate, going from a highly detailed and complex design of the UT-80 to this skeletal Tri Droid has been kind of funny. Like, this thing is about as bare and simple as it gets. Well, I say that not having started the domed head yet. The legs, when finished, connected together pretty easily and were able to bend and connect in just the right shape I was hoping for. I added some dishes where the legs connect to the body to match the joint detailing on the actual Tri Droid.
The city layout is continuing to come together nicely. I'm really happy to have these two squares in because I knew this technique would work in theory. I'd seen it done before by other people, but I hadn't exactly tested it out myself. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to get the correct angle or if I was going to be able to fit the wedge plates into these corners. But everything came together nicely. The angle is perfect because now the doorways are just going to poke out right here towards the road, and I had just enough space. I'm also happy with how the road's looking. It was able to fit in here. It didn't look too cramped with anything else. So far things are looking good. I did decide to wait to put the houses in until everything else is done because I don't need them in right now, and if I do, you know, they're just going to get in the way of me trying to build the floor and put the trees and other stuff in, and I didn't want to break them. Another nice thing this technique is going to add to the city is unique angling. You know, typically when you look at Lego, you think of like 90-degree angles like this right here, or rough kind of blocky corners like this. So to have these buildings placed at non-traditional and kind of weird looking angles, I think is going to make this even more interesting to look at. I did also get that power generator in place. To be honest, I'm not super happy with it. Something about it looks a little weird. I'm not sure what it is. Let me know in the comments if you feel like, you know, there's something off about it. Maybe the blue parts are too thin compared to how wide these rounded sections are. I don't know. Let me know in the comments, but I also don't really like this open area. Really nothing about right here is kind of coming together how I would hoped because there's too much flat space. I don't know what to put on either side of here. I was thinking about maybe building two of these and scooting this one over to the side right here and then having one right there, but then that would kind of block the statues and the back road. So I'm thinking about maybe doing one and adding some smaller like transformers or power boxes around the base, maybe like another planter box with some trees. I don't know, but I do feel like that space needs to be adjusted and filled out a little bit better. I also decided what pattern I'm gonna do for the road. So in last episode, I showed you guys these were the two options I was thinking about. We've got the ingot neat tiled one or the kind of rougher, more cobblestone look. And I actually really liked both of them. And there was a few of you guys who liked both as well. I do appreciate all the comments and feedback you guys left, but what I think I'm gonna do is combine them both. So I'm gonna have the ingots or kind of like fancier look on this main road right here. And then we're gonna have the rougher cobblestone look break off and then go to the individual houses. This will look good because then the entire road won't look the exact same and you'll have a little bit of variation with the roads. You know, you'll have like the main formal road and then the more personalized individual like cobblestone or gravel paths leading right up to the doors. Now for the Tri Droid update. I got two of the legs done and a little bit of the body, and let me tell you, I am just very surprised and very pleased with how everything's looking so far. I guess I'm still riding high off of finishing the UT-80 because I was just really in the zone when building these, and I feel like they turned out really well and look really accurate to the Tri Droid. Now the legs on the actual Tri Droid are pretty plain and simple, so instead of focusing on individual technique and making the legs themselves look as accurate as I could to the Tri Droid, I focused more on shape, capturing the right shape of the legs. You know, you've got this sharp V right here with this longer front leg sticking down, and then you've got the feet. I felt like that was more important to capturing the Tri Droid look. The feet down at the bottom, which have the two toes, just like the actual Tri Droid. Then I got a couple of dishes up here to represent the joints of the legs. And as far as scaling goes, I got really lucky because you can see this current build just barely fits on the bridge. Each of the feet are touching the rails of the bridge on either side, so I got really lucky there, and this is about as big as I can make it, which honestly looks pretty good. This isn't minifig scale, but you can see next to a Galactic Marine, this thing is still gonna be pretty impressive and pretty scary looking. I'm not gonna lie, building these legs really got me hooked on finishing the Tri Droid. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm missing some important pieces to be able to finish it, but hopefully over the next couple of weeks I can start designing the head and guns.
It's time to take a little break from all the exciting stuff and do some rock work. I know, lame, but the sooner I get this middle patch done, the sooner I can connect the main bridge to the mountain and build the middle portion of the city. This section of snow has been holding up progress over here because I wasn't sure how to end it without it looking too flat and weird, but with all the practice I've had over the past couple of weeks, I should be able to cap it off pretty easily. I did accidentally leave this filler brick exposed, and of course it happened to be one of the bright orange ones, but luckily the bridge will cover it up. While I'm over here, I decided to do a little more work on the smaller bridge. I tried to spread my efforts across the whole MOC evenly, that way I don't focus too much on one part and let the others fall behind. Right now I'm juggling the mountain, bridges, and city. I've been focusing on the city a lot more lately, but all three sections are still progressing at a good rate.
All things point to Tri Droids. This week brought another big surprise in that I really enjoyed designing and building the Magna Tri Droid. I thought this was going to be a little side build I forced myself to do as the series went along, since I've never really been interested in designing or building CIS vehicles. But I had so much fun doing the legs and I can't wait to build the rest. I think it's because I get to do a smaller scale detailed project that yields visible progress real quick instead of slogging away at a mountain. Plus the legs just look so cool already and are spiking my creativity and imagination. Next week I hope to start designing its head as well as laying the foundations for the middle of the city, which will open up the door to a lot more building in progress. But that wraps up this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about everything down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time. But until then, happy building.